Andy Techmanski, the CEO of Whitefish Energy. Andy, thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Well, first off, what's this last 2 years been like for you?
It hasn't been easy. We owe a lot of money out to our subcontracting partners, being chewed up by the swamp, if you will. The political tug of war that we got thrust into has been a hard reputation rebuilder. So it's hurt our business, and it's hurt our ability to go out and do good things like we did in Puerto Rico.
I remember a time in Montana politics where, if it was a Montana company, Democrat, Republicans, they would stand in support of that Montana company. It was kind of a Montana first policy, right? The politics would kind of stop there when it came to supporting Montana companies. Did you talk about just being attacked really from all sides. I saw there was a Montana public, I pulled up some of the old headlines, and there was a Montana public radio story from about a couple of years ago where basically both of our senators were grilling Whitefish Energy. And you had Senator John Tester attacking your company and saying normally I would be happy that a contract went to a Montana company, but not in this case. I mean, what was that like going through those types of political attacks?
Well, again, it wasn't easy. We tried to meet with all our Montana delegates several times. We went to Washington, D.C. to try to set up some meetings with them multiple times. Unfortunately, there wasn't much for support there. We just wanted to get our story out and get the truth be told and gain some support locally from the folks that are supposed to be the advocates for the businesses of Montana. But we never got there.
And even from a personal family perspective, I mean, here you and your family became the subject of widespread national and you could call it international media attention. It had to be a bit of a scary time as well, in addition to the attacks on your business, just the fear for your family.
It was a scary time. There was a time for several weeks that we ended up moving my family out of our house because we were getting a barrage of threats and news agencies just showing up at our home, and all while I was in Puerto Rico. So to kind of be defenseless to protect your family while trying to do a good thing down there was a very trying time.
So you're not only the CEO of Whitefish Energy, but you're also a journeyman lineman yourself. We were talking a little bit with, I don't know if you caught the first half of the show with Frank Mealy from the Daily Interlake, but he was just remarking about just how incredible it was that you were able to restore 50% of the power to the island in the 1 month that you were operating on the ground. I mean, logistically, talk about arriving on the ground in Puerto Rico and how much of a challenge it was to get the job done.
Yeah, in perspective of total spend on the project and our ability to ramp up quick, that's true. We actually finished inside 2 months of full production at over 67% of the island's transmission grid was restored, and over half the population. We ramped up really quick, and in comparison to spend of others, there's a lot more value there.
This Bloomberg News piece, it talks, because we mentioned the work that you guys were able to get done in the 1 month that you had on the ground, and it's just remarkable. And as I understand it, especially after reading this Bloomberg News report, you basically got the job done faster, you got the job done cheaper, and yet even still to this day, they're not paying you and the men and women who work for you and worked on this contract for the work that you actually got done.
That's true. We haven't been paid since December of 2017, and still have millions and millions of dollars of outstanding payments, that much of which is due to our subcontractors and utility partners that came over to join in the effort. It's been stalled. It's been very slow. Others have found ways of getting paid quicker, and for some reason, still at a federal level, we believe that things are just going much slower than they should.
When you talk about being gobbled up by the swamp, that's one of the quotes here in the Bloomberg News piece. What does it truly mean to be gobbled up by the swamp? I mean, we've seen the attacks on that they're trying to do on anybody remotely connected to President Trump or the administration or any decision that he makes. We saw what was attempted against Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, just attack before we get the facts. How do you see? How would you define it or describe it when you talk about being gobbled up in the swamp?
Well, gobbled up by the swamp for us, the experience was that we got thrown into a political tug of war of at the benefit of others, and the others being the two Republican Democrat parties battling. By proxy of the name of the company, folks immediately tried to attach Zinke and others to our company, which were not true. It took us over a year and a half, several trips to Washington, D.C., meeting with subcommittees, several other non-Montana delegates that had initially been on the other side of the story. But since then, truth be told, it's hard to argue that the facts that we actually did a good job, that we actually were cost efficient, and that it was probably a better benefit of keeping us there longer than what actually transpired.
What can our listeners do across the state? Because to me, look, Montanans will stand up for our fellow Montanans, and it looks pretty obvious to us here that you guys got attacked because they wanted to attack Donald Trump. You were just collateral damage. They wanted to try to attack you over some perceived connection there. And cost not just your company, but I think cost Montana a lot of money in the process. And at the time, our state was very desperately in need of funding. They called a special session because they were $300 million short in funding, in revenue in the state of Montana. And yet here they are attacking a Montana company that landed a big contract here. What can our listeners do? I mean, should they call our senators? How do we rectify this situation to make sure a Montana company gets paid? And I think that these senators, Republican and Democrat alike, have they done anything to apologize for the way you and your company were treated?
We still have had no contact with any of the local Montana delegates, being Daines Tester and Gianforte. What can people do? Well, look at it this way: we took hundreds of Montanans to Puerto Rico. That was proud Montana linemen, such as myself, that went down there, did an exceptional job. We're building tax revenue back to the state of Montana. What I would ask people to do is reach out to your delegates, show support, try to get them to come to the table and meet with us. Many of them, the delegates, sit on committees that are influential to FEMA processing these invoices and helping the payment flow forward. To date, we haven't gotten that support. It'll only happen if my fellow Montana residents stand up, and do the right thing and call in, write in, say, hey, these guys are good, let's help them out.
One of the questions that I know a lot of folks had early on was like, hey, how does this company from Whitefish, Montana, they've only got 2 employees on the books, how did they land a $300 million contract? And I guess I've just been a little more familiar with government contracts and how these work. I've seen it on the defense side of the house, but a lot of people just lack the understanding on how contracting works and all of that. But either way, how do you answer this question of how does a company with 2 employees in Whitefish land such a big contract?
Well, first off, we had more than 2 employees. That was something that was fabricated. But
so the media got their facts wrong once again.
The media got their facts wrong. But to your point, a normal contract or even a storm restoration response, normally the general contractor then reaches out to, in our case, the IBEW union. It says, okay, here's the need. We need X, Y, and Z amount of labor and resources. The union then goes out to its national network, over 750,000 members, and starts to recruit. So that's avenue number one. The other avenue is that we enlist subcontractors, and everyone does this, large business entities and small alike. And in this case, we reached out to our subcontracting partners that were tried and tested and referenced, and had the ability to respond quickly, and we were able to ramp up very quickly. The third avenue for us was that we actually enlisted electrical utilities. So we had four Florida utilities that partnered with us to come over as part of the storm response. So, along with our organic and our own people and equipment, we enlisted all these subcontractors and partners that made up the complement of over 600 employees and 600 pieces of equipment.
And regardless of how many employees you had, how large the contract was, you got the job done. I mean, Look, the proof is in the pudding here, and yet, folks, you're still not getting paid for the work that you did. The folks who attacked you so viciously before they had all the facts still have not rectified the situation.
We had a lot of experience in extreme mountainous terrain, and that was our biggest benefit. So when we went to Puerto Rico, we had a plan. We were already on projects with helicopters. This was 100% remote helicopter rebuild of transmission power lines. And so we knew how to execute that plan very well. And to your point, we were the most efficient, but yet somehow we're still struggling to get payment.
What do you tell the people who still continue the attacks to this day, say, well, they just got the contract because they're from Whitefish and they were neighbors with Ryan Zinke and that's the only reason they got this contract? What do you tell those folks?
Look at the facts. We've been through the political grinder now for the last 2 years. There's been numerous, from a local level in Puerto Rico to regional to FEMA to federal level investigations, state controller offices, so on and so forth. Through every single investigation, we've been seen as the good choice, as the most efficient, as very cost effective, very organized. We did all that, yet others found a way to get paid billions of dollars, and we're still waiting on FEMA to step up and obligate and get through the process.
Yeah.
Look at the facts is what I would respond to that question.
Yeah, it's just a crazy story. And again, for those who haven't seen it, Bloomberg News had a piece just a couple of weeks ago, and it was a piece by Will Wade and Michelle Kasky that basically points about all these other folks in Puerto Rico who got in trouble and all of that, but yet Whitefish Energy got the job done. And stayed out of trouble, too, by the way. Andy Techmanski, great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it.